"Sydney, we can't make it to Emma's birthday. Your sister needs us to watch the twins that weekend." I stood there in my parents' kitchen, holding the invitation Emma had spent 2 hours making. Construction paper, glitter glue, her careful 6-year-old handwriting spelling out Grandma and Grandpa in crooked letters. My mother didn't even look up from her phone when she said it, just kept scrolling, thumb moving in that practiced rhythm I'd watched 1,000 times before. My father nodded from behind his newspaper, already done with the conversation, already moving on. I felt that familiar tightness in my chest, the one that's lived there since I was small enough to believe things might change. I didn't argue. I never do. 4 seconds of silence. I counted them. My name is Sydney Marsh. I'm 32 years old. I work as a freelance graphic designer from my home office in Portland, Oregon. For 3 years now, I've been sending my parents $700 every single week. No questions asked. No gratitude expected. And somehow, despite all of it, I'm still invisible to them. I drove home with Emma's invitation sitting on the passenger seat. The glitter caught the afternoon light coming through the windshield. I thought about all the patterns I'd spent years pretending weren't patterns at all. My younger sister Vanessa has always been the favorite, the golden child who could do no wrong. I was the responsible one, the one who didn't need attention, the one who figured things out alone because no one thought to ask if I needed help. I remembered my 10th birthday. They forgot the cake. My high school graduation. They arrived 40 minutes late, missed my speech entirely. My college acceptance letter to Portland State. My mother glanced at it and said, "That's nice, honey," then immediately started talking about Vanessa's new boyfriend. But I convinced myself it would be different now, that being a good daughter, a provider, would finally earn me a place in their priorities. That money could buy what love hadn't given me freely. I pulled into my driveway and saw Emma's face pressed against the living room window, waiting, watching for me the way I used to watch for my parents when I was her age. I plastered on a smile, the kind I've perfected over 3 decades, but something shifted inside my chest, something small and quiet and long suppressed. A voice I'd been silencing for years whispered a single question I couldn't ignore anymore. Why am I still trying to earn love I should have been given freely? I sat at my kitchen table after tucking Emma into bed. The house was quiet, too quiet. I opened my banking app and started scrolling through statements. 3 years of transfers, every single week, $700, sometimes more when they said it was urgent. I did the math in my head first, then I did it again on my phone's calculator because I didn't want to believe it. $2,800 every month. For 36 months, over $100,000 total. I told myself it was temporary, that I was helping them through a rough patch after Dad's early retirement. That family takes care of family. But temporary doesn't last 3 years, and help doesn't flow in only one direction. I opened my text thread with Vanessa. Her messages filled the screen. "Can you watch the twins Saturday? Jason's being impossible again. Look at this cute thing Mia did. I need someone to talk to." Every message about her life, her needs, her problems. I scrolled through my responses. Always supportive, always available, always there. The imbalance was so stark, I wondered how I'd missed it for so long. I remembered Vanessa's twins' birthday party 2 months ago. I could still see the backyard transformed into some kind of carnival wonderland. Bounce house, face painter, catered food from that expensive Italian place downtown. My parents had arrived early, arms full of wrapped presents, faces bright with excitement. Mom posted maybe 30 photos that day. I counted them later. Every single one captioned with heart emojis and blessed grandma and best grandkids ever. I'd brought thoughtful gifts for both twins, books I'd carefully selected based on their interests. I'd stayed after the party ended and helped Vanessa break down tables and bag up trash while everyone else left. No one thanked me, no one asked about Emma, no one even took a photo of her. I closed my eyes and let myself see the pattern I'd been avoiding my entire life. I'd spent 32 years performing the role of the self-sufficient daughter, the one who didn't need anything, the one who figured it out alone. I'd made it so easy for them to neglect me that they'd stop seeing me at all. And now I was teaching Emma the same lesson, that her worth was measured by how little she asked for, that love was something you earned by being invisible. I picked up my phone. My hand shook slightly as I dialed. Mom answered on the third ring. Sydney, is everything okay? Mom, Emma's been talking about this party for months. She specifically asked if you and Dad would be there. Sydney, you know how demanding the twins are. Vanessa really needs our help. I took a breath, steadied my voice. I need your help too. I'm asking for one afternoon. Don't be dramatic. Emma will have other birthdays. The twins are at a difficult age right now. The silence stretched between us. I waited for her to hear what she just said, to realize she was choosing one grandchild over another, to offer some kind of compromise. She didn't. I realized then that my mother genuinely believed Vanessa's needs would always outweigh mine. Not because Vanessa's life was harder, but because I'd never made mine look hard enough to matter. I hung up without saying goodbye, something I'd never done before. I sat in the silence of my kitchen. The refrigerator hummed, the clock above the stove ticked. I felt something unfamiliar rising in my chest. Not anger exactly. Something colder, something that felt like clarity. I opened my laptop and created a new folder. I labeled it Documentation. I wasn't sure what I was documenting yet, but instinct told me I'd need proof of everything. 3 days before Emma's birthday, my father called. I was making dinner, pasta with marinara sauce from a jar because the good ingredients were too expensive that week. Sydney, I need a favor. His voice had that casual tone I'd learned to recognize, the one that meant money. We've got some unexpected home repairs. Need about $3,000 to cover it. I turned off the burner, wiped my hands on a dish towel. What kind of repairs? Just some things that came up. You know how it is with older houses. Did you get quotes from contractors? He sighed, irritated that I was asking questions. Sydney, I don't have time to play 20 questions. Can you help or not? Something in his tone felt wrong, too defensive, too vague. Let me think about it and get back to you. We need it by Friday. He hung up before I could respond. I stood in my kitchen holding my phone. The pasta water had stopped boiling. I did something I'd never done before. I opened my mother's Facebook page. The first post made my hands go numb. Photos from last weekend. My parents at some beautiful resort with mountain views and infinity pools. Vanessa and her husband and the twins all smiling in matching outfits. The caption read, "Much needed family time with our babies. So blessed." The post was from 4 days ago, while my parents were supposedly too busy to commit to Emma's birthday. I scrolled down, more photos, a fancy restaurant 2 weeks before that, an amusement park trip the month before, a weekend at the coast in July. Every single post featured Vanessa's family. Every caption talked about making memories and being grateful for family. Emma and I weren't in a single photo. I kept scrolling. 6 months back, a year. The pattern was everywhere once I let myself see it. Trips, dinners, experiences, all funded by money I'd been sending them every single week. I opened my banking app and looked at my own account. The number felt obscene in its smallness. I'd been stretching every dollar for 3 years. My car needed new brakes. I'd been putting it off for 5 months. I hadn't been to the dentist in over a year, even though my insurance covered it because I couldn't afford the copay. I bought generic everything while sending my parents $700 a week, and they'd been using it to take Vanessa's family on vacations. I sat down at my kitchen table. The pasta was getting cold. I didn't care. I thought about every excuse I'd made for them over the years. They're stressed, they're tired, they're dealing with their own problems. They don't mean to exclude us. They love us in their own way. The excuses sounded hollow now, pathetic even. I thought about Emma's face 3 days ago when she asked if Grandma and Grandpa were coming to her party. The hope in her eyes, the trust that family shows up for each other. The trust I'd inherited from my own childhood and never quite lost no matter how many times they proved it was misplaced. I was teaching her the same lesson, that love is earned by being convenient, that worth is measured by how little you ask for. I opened my banking app again. The scheduled transfer was set to go out tomorrow morning. $700. Like clockwork, like obligation, like rent on a relationship that only existed when they needed something. My finger hovered over the cancel button. I didn't press it. Not yet. But I didn't confirm it either. Instead, I opened a new note on my phone. I started typing a message I'd been composing in my head for 3 years. The words came easily now, sharp and clear and true. I saved it as a draft. I wasn't ready to send it, but I was ready to stop pretending everything was fine. Emma's birthday morning came in bright and warm. I woke up early and decorated our small backyard while she slept. Pink and purple streamers she'd chosen herself, balloons tied to the fence posts, a modest cake I'd baked at midnight after she went to bed, chocolate with vanilla frosting, her favorite. Everything was perfect, except for the 2 empty chairs I set out at the head of the table. Just in case. Emma came outside in her birthday dress and spun in a circle. "It's so pretty, Mommy." Then she looked at the chairs. "When are Grandma and Grandpa coming?" "We'll see, baby." "But they're coming, right?" "Let's focus on your friends. They'll be here soon." She asked 3 more times before the party started. Each time felt like a small knife. The party was small. 3 friends from school and their parents. My best friend Rachel, who'd been my support system through everything. I watched Emma laugh and play pin the tail on the donkey. I tried to be present. I tried not to watch the driveway every time I heard a car. My parents didn't call. They didn't text. They didn't acknowledge the day at all. Rachel found me in the kitchen during cake time. I was lighting 6 candles. My hands were shaking slightly. "They're not coming, are they?" I shook my head. I couldn't speak. "Sid, how long are you going to let them do this to you?" To Emma. "I don't know what you mean." "Yes, you do." Her voice was gentle but firm. "I've watched you shrink yourself for them for 10 years. I've watched you give and get nothing back. When does it stop?" I didn't have an answer. I'd never let myself ask the question out loud. We sang Happy Birthday. Emma blew out her candles. She made a wish with her eyes squeezed tight. I wondered if she was wishing for grandparents who showed up. After everyone left, I took a photo of Emma with her cake. She was surrounded by the cards her friends had brought. She was radiant, genuinely happy despite everything missing from the day. I looked at that photo for a long time. Then I opened social media. I don't know why. Maybe I needed to confirm what I already knew. My mother had posted new photos 2 hours ago, during Emma's party. More pictures from the resort. Vanessa's twins on a water slide. My father pushing them on swings. The caption read, "Last day of paradise with our favorite little ones." I stared at my phone screen. The kitchen was quiet. Emma was in the living room watching a movie. Something broke inside me, not dramatically, not loudly, just quietly and completely, like a bone that's been fractured for years finally snapping clean. I'd been waiting my entire life for my parents to see me, to choose me, to prove that I mattered, and they never would. Not because I wasn't enough, but because they decided I didn't need to be chosen. I was the strong one, the independent one, the one who'd be fine without them. They'd made me responsible for my own neglect. I opened my banking app, found the scheduled transfer set for Monday morning, $700. I pressed cancel. Then I went to the recurring payment settings, canceled all future transfers, every single one. My hands were steady. My breathing was calm. I wasn't angry. I wasn't emotional. I was simply done. I sat there in the quiet of Emma's bedroom later that night, watching her sleep with frosting still on her cheek, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Clarity. Sometimes the people who should love you most are the ones who take you for granted the longest. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, if you've ever wondered when enough is finally enough, stay with me, because what happened next changed everything. And if this story resonates with you, hit that like button and subscribe. You're not alone in this. 5 days passed without contact from my parents. The silence felt strange, eerie almost. No texts asking for favors. No calls with vague emergencies. No casual dismissals of things that mattered to me. I went about my routine. Work, Emma, dinner, bedtime stories. I existed in a space I'd created for myself. For the first time in my adult life, I didn't initiate contact. I didn't check in. I didn't ask how they were doing. On day 6, my father texted, "Transfer didn't go through, system error." I stared at those 2 sentences. No mention of Emma's birthday, no apology for missing it, no acknowledgement that an entire week had passed. Just the assumption that money would continue flowing like it always had. I typed a response, deleted it, typed another, deleted that too. Finally, I settled on 2 words. Not an error. 3 dots appeared on the screen, then disappeared. No response came. I met Rachel for coffee the next afternoon. We sat outside even though it was cold. I needed the air. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Lighter, guilty, terrified, free." I wrapped my hands around my cup. All of it at once. That's normal. You've been conditioned to feel responsible for their comfort while they feel no responsibility for your pain. What if I'm overreacting? What if I'm being... Sid, she leaned forward. They missed your daughter's birthday to vacation with your sister while you were paying for it. You're not overreacting. You're finally reacting appropriately. That evening, my phone lit up with a group text. My mother had started a thread. Me, her, my father, and Vanessa. "Sydney, your father tells me you've stopped the transfers. We need to talk about this. We have bills that depend on your help. This is very inconsiderate timing." I stared at the words, inconsiderate timing, as if there was a considerate time to stop funding people who didn't show up for my child. Vanessa's message came through seconds later. "What's going on? Mom and Dad are really stressed." I read both messages 3 times. Not once did anyone mention Emma. Not once did anyone acknowledge their absence from her birthday. Not once did anyone ask if I was okay or why I'd made this decision. The entire focus was on my obligation to continue funding their lifestyle. I started typing a response. My thumbs moved fast across the screen. I explained everything: the years of neglect, the financial strain, the missed birthday, the resort photos posted during Emma's party. Then I stopped. I deleted every word. I realized that anything I said would be twisted, dismissed, used against me. They'd make me the villain for having boundaries. They'd tell extended family I'd abandoned them in their time of need. They'd rewrite history to make themselves the victims of my cruelty. Instead, I took screenshots, the entire conversation, every message. I saved them in my documentation folder. I sat there holding my phone. The screen went dark. I could see my reflection in the black glass. I'd been trying to have a rational conversation with people who benefited from my irrationality. They'd never acknowledge my perspective because doing so would require them to admit their treatment of me had been wrong for decades. That Emma deserved better. That I deserve better. And they'd never admit that. I closed the text thread without responding. The question that had been growing louder each day sat heavy in my chest. What do you owe people who've never treated you like you matter? I'm still figuring that out. Maybe you have thoughts on this too. 2 days later, my mother called. Not a text, a call. I stared at her name on my screen for 3 rings. My body tensed with old conditioning. The instinct to answer immediately, to be available, to be good. I answered on the 4th ring. "Sydney, I don't understand what's happening. Your father and I have always been there for you." I almost laughed. The sound caught in my throat. I stayed quiet instead. Let the silence stretch between us. "We need to discuss the situation like adults. You can't just cut us off without explanation." "I gave you an explanation. You didn't respond." "What explanation? You sent a cryptic text to your father." "I said it wasn't an error. The transfer stopped because I stopped them." Her voice shifted, took on that wounded tone I knew too well, the one that used to make me apologize for things that weren't my fault. "I don't understand where this hostility is coming from. We've done everything for you. We raised you, supported you." "You missed Emma's birthday." Silence, heavy and long. "We explained that. Vanessa needed us. Vanessa always needs you. I needed you too. Emma needed her grandparents. Sydney, you're being unreasonable. The twins are at a difficult age. Emma is older. She understands. She's 6. And frankly, this feels like you're punishing us for helping your sister. Something in me snapped, not into anger, into clarity. My voice stayed calm, but the words came out surgical and clean. I've given you over $100,000 in 3 years. I've been available whenever you called. I've supported you financially, emotionally, and practically. And you've consistently chosen Vanessa over me, over Emma. You didn't just miss one birthday, you've missed her entire childhood. That's not fair. You were at a resort. I saw the photos. You weren't too busy. You just didn't prioritize us. Her voice hardened. The wounded mother act dropped away. We don't have to explain our choices to you. We're your parents. And I'm your daughter. That should mean something. She was quiet for 3 seconds. Then she delivered what she clearly believed was the winning argument. If you don't resume the transfers, we'll have serious financial problems. We've structured our budget around your help. You can't just abandon us. I felt the old guilt rising, the familiar pull to fix things, to smooth everything over, to make myself smaller so everyone else could be comfortable, to apologize for having needs. But I didn't. I'm not abandoning you. I'm stopping the funding of my own exclusion. If you need money, you can ask Vanessa. Or you can treat me like I'm actually part of this family. This is emotional blackmail. No, Mom, this is me finally having boundaries. I hung up before she could respond. My hands were shaking, not from fear, from adrenaline, from the unfamiliar sensation of standing up for myself, of saying the things I'd been swallowing for 32 years. My phone started ringing again immediately. Her name lit up the screen. I watched it ring, once, twice, 3 times. I silenced it. Then I blocked the number, not permanently, just until I could breathe, just until the shaking stopped, just until I could trust myself not to answer and take it all back. I sat on my couch in the quiet of my living room. The afternoon light came through the window. Emma was at school. The house was mine. And for the first time in longer than I could remember, I felt like I could breathe all the way down. The next morning, Vanessa called. I stared at her, name on my screen. Part of me wanted to let it go to voicemail, but curiosity won. Sid, what the hell? Mom is crying. Dad is furious. What's going on with you? Did they tell you what happened? They said you cut them off financially and you're having some kind of breakdown. I almost laughed. Of course, that's how they framed it. Did they mention Emma's birthday? What about it? They missed it. They chose to stay at a resort with you instead of coming to their granddaughter's party. Her tone shifted, defensive. That's not fair. They were already here. The twins needed them. I needed them too. You're always fine, Sid. You don't need the same level of support I do. There it was, the assumption that had shaped my entire life. I was always fine. I didn't need anything. I was strong enough to handle neglect. My voice stayed level, but the words came out sharp and clear. Do you know how much money I've given Mom and Dad in the last 3 years? I don't know, some help with bills or whatever. Over $100,000. Silence, long and heavy. That's not possible. $700 a week for 3 years. Do the math. Why would you do that? Because they said they needed it. Because I thought it was temporary. Because I thought if I helped enough, I'd finally matter to them as much as you do. Vanessa's voice turned cold. So this is about jealousy? You're punishing them because you think they love me more? I'm not punishing anyone. I'm stopping the funding of trips and experiences I'm not invited to. I'm setting boundaries with people who treat me like an ATM and you like a daughter. That's not true. You're twisting things. Vanessa, when was the last time Mom and Dad came to visit me? When was the last time they asked about my life? When was the last time they posted a photo of Emma? Silence again, longer this time. You've always been so independent. You never seem to need them like I do. I closed my eyes. There it was again. The justification, the excuse, the reason why my neglect was acceptable. I shouldn't have to beg for basic acknowledgement. Neither should Emma. You're being dramatic. I'm being honest. Vanessa's voice hardened into something final. Fine, do whatever you want. But don't expect me to get involved in this drama. And don't be surprised when mom and dad decide they're done with your ultimatums. I'm not giving ultimatums. I'm just not participating in my own erasure anymore. She hung up. I sat there holding my phone. The screen went dark. I could see my reflection again in the black glass. I looked tired, but not broken. I realized something in that moment. Vanessa had always known about the favoritism. She'd always seen how differently they treated us. And she'd never questioned it because she benefited from it. She needed me to be the strong one, the invisible one, the one who didn't need anything, because that meant more resources for her, more attention, more love. The family system required me to be small so everyone else could be comfortable, and they would fight to keep that system intact. Not because they didn't love me, but because my role in their lives depended on me not demanding to be seen. I'd spent 32 years playing that role, perfecting it, making it easy for them to forget I existed unless they needed something. And now I was refusing to play it anymore. They weren't going to forgive me for that. 3 days of silence. Then a Facebook message appeared from Aunt Linda, my father's sister. I hadn't spoken to her in over a year, maybe longer. The message was brief. Sydney, we need to talk. Call me when you can. It's about your parents and Vanessa. My first instinct was to ignore it, to avoid more family drama, to protect myself from whatever new accusation or guilt trip was coming. But something in the tone felt different, urgent, concerned. I called her. Sydney, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Have you been giving your parents money? My stomach dropped. Why? Because I have. For 2 years. They told me they were struggling after your dad's retirement, that they had unexpected medical bills. I've been sending them $500 a month. I stopped breathing. 500 a month for 2 years, while I was sending 700 a week. Linda, how much have you sent them total? About $12,000. Sydney, what's going on? My mind raced. If Linda had been sending money, who else had they asked? How many other family members were funding their lifestyle while being told they were the only ones helping? I've been sending them $700 a week for 3 years. Silence on the other end. Then, oh my God. We compared stories. The details were eerily similar. Both of us had been told about financial hardship. Both of us had been asked for temporary help that became permanent. Both of us had been made to feel like our support was critical to their survival. Linda's voice shook slightly. I saw your mother's Facebook post from that resort last week. I recognized it because my husband and I stayed there for our anniversary. It's not cheap, Sydney. We're talking $1,500 a night minimum. I felt sick. The vague explanations, the defensive reactions when I asked questions, the sudden emergencies that always required immediate funds. It all made sense now. Linda, can you send me screenshots of your text conversations with them? The ones where they asked for money? Of course. Why? Because I'm documenting everything. She sent them within minutes. I opened each one, request after request. Some of them dated the same week as my transfers. They'd been collecting money from both of us simultaneously, while posting vacation photos and taking Vanessa's family on trips. I sent Linda the resort photos, the vacation posts, the evidence of a lifestyle that didn't match the story they'd been selling. Her response came through in a text. They've been lying to both of us, and probably others. We started making calls. Together. Uncle Mark confirmed he'd been sending money. $300 a month for 18 months. My cousin Jennifer admitted to a one-time loan of $5,000 that was never repaid. Each conversation revealed another layer. Another family member who'd been told they were the only one helping. Another person who felt guilty for not doing more. The total amount was staggering. Over $200,000 from various family members over 3 years. I sat at my kitchen table with pages of notes spread in front of me. Names, amounts, dates, a systematic pattern of manipulation that had been going on for years. I felt a strange mix of validation and betrayal. I wasn't imagining the discrepancies. I wasn't being paranoid or ungrateful or difficult. My parents had been exploiting their family's goodwill while showing favoritism to Vanessa, possibly because Vanessa never questioned them, never asked for accountability, never threatened their comfortable arrangement by demanding to be treated like she mattered. I'd been the problem because I'd finally asked them to see me, and they couldn't afford for me to be seen, not when being invisible made me easier to use. Aunt Linda called me the next morning. "We need to have a family meeting, everyone who's been sending them money. We present a united front." I hesitated. The old conditioning screamed at me to protect my parents, to keep family business private, to smooth things over and pretend everything was fine. But I thought about Emma, about this pattern continuing into her generation, about the other family members still being exploited without knowing the full picture. Okay, let's do it. Over the next week, Linda and I documented everything: bank transfers, text messages, social media posts showing vacations and expensive dinners, timelines comparing when they requested money versus when they posted resort photos. We created a clear, factual presentation that removed emotion and focused on patterns. The process felt simultaneously empowering and heartbreaking. I was building a case against my own parents, but I was also protecting my daughter and my extended family from continued manipulation. Rachel came over one evening while I was organizing documents. She sat across from me at the kitchen table. "What do you want from this meeting?" "I want them to acknowledge what they've done. And if they don't," I stopped sorting papers, "then at least everyone else will see the truth. No one else will be manipulated." "What about your relationship with them?" I looked at her, really looked at her. "I don't know if there's a relationship to save. Maybe there never was. Maybe I was just a resource to them." She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Didn't say anything. Didn't need to. On Thursday, I sent the email, carefully worded, professional. I copied Aunt Linda, Uncle Mark, and Jennifer. "We need to have a family meeting to discuss financial matters and family dynamics. Sunday at 2 p.m. at Aunt Linda's house. This is not optional. If you don't attend, we'll proceed without you." My mother responded within 10 minutes. "This is ridiculous. We don't owe you or anyone else an explanation for our personal finances." I stared at the response, the audacity of it, the complete lack of self-awareness. Aunt Linda replied in the thread before I could. "Then you can explain that position to the entire family. See you Sunday." The days leading up to Sunday felt strange. I expected to be anxious, scared, guilty. But I felt calm, not because I expected a positive outcome, but because I was no longer carrying the burden of their dysfunction alone. I was no longer protecting them from the consequences of their own choices. I spent time with Emma, really present, really engaged. We baked cookies, we went to the park, we watched movies on the couch with popcorn and blankets. I hadn't been able to be this present in years, not while managing my parents' constant demands and emotional manipulation. Emma looked at me Saturday night while I was tucking her in. "You seem happy, Mommy." "I am, baby." "How come?" I smoothed her hair back from her forehead. "Because I'm learning to take care of us better." She smiled and closed her eyes, satisfied with that answer in the way only 6-year-olds can be. Sunday morning arrived with clear skies and a strange sense of inevitability. I dressed carefully, nothing too formal, nothing that suggested I was trying too hard. Jeans and a sweater, comfortable, grounded. I'd spent 32 years trying to earn my parents' love through perfect behavior and financial support. Now, I was about to do something I'd never done before: hold them accountable, not with anger or drama, just with facts and witnesses and the truth they'd been hiding from everyone. Have you ever reached a point where protecting yourself meant exposing the people who hurt you? Where does loyalty end and self-preservation begin? I was about to find out. I arrived at Aunt Linda's house 15 minutes early. Uncle Mark and Jennifer were already there. So were two other cousins I hadn't expected. Everyone looked tense but determined. We stood in Linda's living room making small talk that felt hollow and necessary. My parents arrived exactly on time. Vanessa was with them. I watched them walk up the driveway through the window. Their body language was defensive, annoyed. like this was an inconvenience rather than a reckoning. My mother spoke first as they entered. I don't appreciate being ambushed like this. Aunt Linda's voice was calm, steady. Sit down, we have things to discuss. Linda led the conversation. She'd prepared everything on her laptop connected to the TV. She started with the timeline: who was asked for money, when, how much. Then she showed the social media posts, expensive vacations and dinners that coincided with requests for emergency funds. The numbers filled the screen. Over $200,000 collected from family members over 3 years. I watched my parents' faces. My father looked caught, cornered. My mother looked furious. This is a gross invasion of privacy. Our finances are our business. Uncle Mark leaned forward in his chair. You made it our business when you asked us for money under false pretenses. We never lied. We did have expenses. Resort vacations aren't expenses. They're luxuries funded by our generosity. Vanessa jumped in, her voice sharp and defensive. This is ridiculous. So they took some trips. They're retired. They deserve to enjoy themselves. I spoke for the first time. My voice came out quieter than I expected, but clear. Not with money they claimed was for medical bills and basic living expenses. Not while excluding me and Emma from family events. Not while manipulating people who trusted them. My father tried a different approach. His voice took on that gentle, reasonable tone he uses when he wants something, when he's trying to smooth things over. Sydney, sweetheart, I think there's been a misunderstanding. We never meant to hurt you. You missed Emma's birthday to vacation with Vanessa's family, using money I gave you for emergencies. That's not fair. We didn't plan. Yes, you did. The resort was booked weeks in advance. You knew about Emma's party. You chose not to come. My mother's mask slipped. Her voice turned cold and sharp. Maybe if you weren't so needy, if you didn't require constant validation. The room went silent. I felt everyone's eyes shift. The air changed. Even Vanessa looked uncomfortable. Aunt Linda's voice cut through. That's enough. Here's what's going to happen. Everyone in this room who gave you money under false pretenses will be getting written repayment plans. You'll pay back every dollar with interest. And if you refuse, we'll pursue legal options for fraud. My mother stood up fast. Her chair scraped against the floor. This is extortion. We can and we will. You exploited your family's love and trust. That has consequences. My father stood too. Vanessa was already moving toward the door. They walked in formation. United, defensive, ready to leave and rewrite this story to make themselves the victims. But before they reached the door, I spoke. One final sentence. The words came from somewhere deep and true. I hope it was worth it. The money, the favoritism, the lies. I hope it was worth losing your daughter and granddaughter. My mother stopped, her hand on the doorknob. She turned and looked at me. For just a second, I saw something in her face. Recognition, maybe. Or fear. The realization that this time I wasn't backing down. Then she opened the door and walked out. My father followed. Vanessa didn't look back. The door closed. The house was quiet, except for the sound of their car starting in the driveway. I stood there feeling lighter than I had in years. The days following the confrontation were chaotic. My mother sent a barrage of texts. They alternated between rage and manipulation in a pattern I'd seen my entire life. You've destroyed this family. Your father is having chest pains because of the stress you've caused. Vanessa is devastated. The twins are asking why their aunt hates them. I didn't respond. I'd learned that engagement only fed the cycle. Every reply would be twisted. Every explanation would be used against me. The extended family divided predictably. Aunt Linda and Uncle Mark stood firm on the repayment demands. Jennifer supported me completely, but other relatives started calling. Ones who weren't directly involved. Ones who didn't lose money but had opinions about my choices. They suggested I was overreacting, that family should forgive, that this public confrontation was too harsh, that I should have handled it privately. I realized something listening to these calls. Some people will always prioritize keeping peace over addressing harm. They'll ask victims to be quiet so perpetrators can be comfortable. They'll call boundary setting divisive and call out the person who broke the silence, instead of the ones who created the problem. 3 days after the meeting, Vanessa sent a long text. I saw the notification and waited 5 minutes before opening it. It wasn't an apology. It was a justification. I don't understand why you're doing this. Mom and Dad have always tried their best. They're not perfect, but they love us. You're tearing the family apart over money and hurt feelings. I think you need to consider whether your pride is worth destroying our parents. I read it twice. Then I responded with a single sentence. I'm not destroying anything. I'm just refusing to pretend anymore. The 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again, then nothing. Vanessa didn't reply. That same afternoon, I received a message from Uncle Tom, my father's brother. I barely knew him. He'd been estranged from the family for as long as I could remember. No one talked about why. His message was long and detailed. He shared that he'd cut contact with my parents 15 years ago for similar reasons. He described a pattern of manipulation and favoritism that predated my birth. He'd watched them do to me what they'd done to him. The message ended with something I didn't expect. I'm sorry I didn't warn you. I thought maybe they'd changed. I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself. It's harder than people think. I sat with that message for a long time. This validation meant more than I expected. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't overreacting. The pattern had always been there. I just hadn't been allowed to name it. 2 days later, Aunt Linda's lawyer sent formal demand letters to my parents. The letter outlined repayment terms in clear legal language, professional, airtight. I received a copy by email. My parents had 2 options: repay the money in structured installments over 5 years or face legal action for fraud and financial elder abuse. I stared at the letter on my screen. It felt surreal, clinical, but also right. My mother called one last time. I saw her name on my phone and almost didn't answer. But something told me this call would be different, that this was the final attempt. I answered. Her voice was cold, stripped of the usual manipulation and wounded mother act. You'll regret this. Family is everything, and you've chosen money over us. I took a breath. My response came out calm and final. No, Mom, you chose money over me. I'm just choosing myself now. Silence on the other end, long and heavy. Then she hung up. I sat there holding my phone. The afternoon light came through my kitchen window. Emma was at school. The house was quiet. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt tired and free and sad for what could have been if they'd chosen differently. But mostly I felt clear. For the first time in 32 years, I felt clear. 2 weeks after the confrontation, my mother made a critical mistake. She posted a public Facebook status, long and emotional and carefully crafted, to paint herself as the victim, an ungrateful daughter who abandoned her struggling elderly parents in their time of need. The post gained traction fast. Extended family, old family friends, people who didn't know the full story started commenting with sympathy and outrage on my behalf. On her behalf, I mean. Against me. I started receiving messages. Is this true? What happened? Your mother seems so hurt. Rachel told me to stay quiet, to let it blow over. Engaging will only make it worse. But Aunt Linda called with different advice. They're controlling the narrative. If you don't speak up, their version becomes the only version, and it becomes the truth. I wrestled with this for 2 days. I'd never been one to air family issues publicly. It felt wrong, exposed, vulnerable. But I thought about Emma, about the other family members still being manipulated, about future victims of patterns that only continue because no one speaks up. I crafted a single response, factual, no emotion, no accusations, just documented truth. I posted screenshots of the financial requests, text messages asking for money, right next to screenshots of vacation photos from the same time periods. Resort pools, fancy restaurants, family photos with Vanessa's twins that I was never invited to join. I included the total amount, over $100,000 from me alone, over $200,000 from the extended family. I added a brief statement. I'm sharing this not for sympathy, but for accountability. For 3 years, I sent my parents $700 per week while they told me they were struggling financially. During that time, they took multiple luxury, vacations, and consistently prioritized my sister's family over mine and my daughter. When I set boundaries, I was told I was destroying the family. The truth is, I'm just refusing to fund my own exclusion anymore. I posted it. Then I put my phone face down on the table and went to pick up Emma from school. By the time I got home, the post had exploded. Comments flooded in, some supportive, some critical, but most were shocked. Several family members privately messaged me confirming similar experiences with my parents. My mother tried to delete her original post, but screenshots had already spread through the family network. The truth was out. Vanessa messaged me that evening. "You didn't have to do that. You've humiliated them." I stared at her message. Then I typed back, "They humiliated themselves. I just stopped protecting them from the consequences." She didn't respond. The next day, my father called from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer. But something made me pick up. His voice was different, defeated, without the usual bluster and defensiveness. "We need to talk, really talk. Not about money, about everything." I stood in my kitchen holding the phone. The old hope flickered despite my better judgment. The hope that maybe this time would be different, that maybe they'd finally see me, acknowledge what they'd done, choose me for once. But I'd learned something through all of this. Hope without change is just denial in disguise. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet them. A neutral location, a quiet coffee shop on the edge of town. I brought Aunt Linda for support and witness. I needed someone else to hear what was said so I couldn't be gaslit later. My parents arrived looking smaller somehow, older. My father's shoulders were hunched. My mother's face was drawn. The instinctive urge to comfort them rose in my chest, to fix their distress, to make everything okay. I resisted it. We sat down. 4 of us at a table meant for 2. The silence stretched. My father spoke first. "We've done a lot of thinking since the meeting. We realize we've made mistakes." I waited. I'd learned to listen for what wasn't being said. "We never meant to hurt you. We thought you understood that Vanessa needed more help because of the twins, because her situation is more complicated." "Stop." My voice came out firm, clear. "This isn't an apology. This is another justification." My mother leaned forward, her voice tight. "We're trying to apologize, and you're attacking us." "No, you're trying to get me to accept blame for being hurt by your choices. That's not the same thing." The conversation shifted. I watched it happen in real time, the mask slipping, the real purpose of this meeting revealing itself. They wanted me to take down the social media post. They were facing social consequences, friends questioning them, family members demanding explanations, their reputation damaged in ways they couldn't control. My father's voice took on that familiar manipulative tone, the one that used to work on me. "That post has caused us real harm. People are treating us differently. Your mother can barely show her face at church. You caused yourselves harm. I just documented it. Family problems should stay private. You made it public when you posted your victim narrative. I just provided context." My mother's hands clenched on the table. "If you don't take down that post and apologize publicly, we're done. No more family, no relationship with Emma. You'll be choosing strangers' opinions over your own parents." I felt the old fear rising, the terror of abandonment, of being truly alone, of losing the family I'd spent my entire life trying to earn. But then I looked at Aunt Linda. She nodded slightly, just once. And I remembered something important. I'd been alone this entire time. I'd just been pretending I had family. My response came out calm, final. "I'm not taking down the post, and I'm not apologizing for telling the truth. If you want a relationship with me and Emma, you'll need to actually apologize. Not for being caught, but for the years of favoritism, manipulation, and exclusion. You'll need to make genuine amends, and you'll need to prove through sustained action that you've changed." My parents looked at each other. Some silent communication passed between them. They stood up. My father reached for his jacket. My mother grabbed her purse. "Don't come crying to us when you realize what you've lost." My mother's parting shot hung in the air. They walked toward the door. I watched them leave. My father held the door for my mother. They got into their car, drove away. I sat there with Aunt Linda in the quiet coffee shop. The afternoon sun came through the window. I waited for the sadness to hit, the regret, the doubt, but all I felt was relief, not sadness, not regret, just the quiet peace of finally being honest, of finally choosing myself, of finally understanding that some relationships aren't worth the cost of your dignity. Linda reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You did good." I nodded. I believed her. 3 weeks after the failed reconciliation, I received the first repayment check, $500. It arrived in a plain white envelope with no note, no acknowledgement, just a check with my father's signature. Aunt Linda received one too. The lawyer's demand letters had worked. My parents were paying back the money. Slowly, resentfully, but paying. I stood in my kitchen holding that check. The paper felt thin between my fingers. It wasn't about the money anymore. It had never really been about the money. It was about accountability, about consequences finally matching actions, about them having to face what they'd done in a tangible way they couldn't deny or rewrite. The extended family had restructured around the truth. Aunt Linda hosted a family dinner the following Sunday. My parents weren't invited. It was the first family gathering I'd attended where I didn't feel invisible. Emma played with her cousins in the backyard. I sat at Linda's dining table with relatives who actually asked about my life, my work, my experiences, real questions that required real answers, not polite small talk before they moved on to more interesting people. I realized something sitting there. I'd been so focused on my parents' approval that I'd missed the relationships that were actually available to me, the family members who would have seen me if I'd let them. If I hadn't been so busy chasing people who refused to look. I hadn't heard from Vanessa in over a month. I checked her social media one evening after Emma went to bed. My parents were still heavily involved with her family, still babysitting, still attending events, still posting photos with captions about being blessed. The favoritism hadn't changed. What changed was my participation in it. I felt a pang of loss, not for my parents, but for the sister relationship I thought we had. I realized now we'd never had a real relationship. We'd had a dynamic where I supported and she received, where I gave and she took. And when I stopped playing my role, there was nothing left to hold us together. Emma asked me one night at bedtime why we didn't see Grandma and Grandpa anymore. I'd prepared for this conversation. I'd thought about how to explain it in a way that was honest but age-appropriate. Sometimes people we love don't treat us the way we deserve to be treated, and when that happens, we have to make hard choices to protect ourselves. Did they hurt you? Yes, sweetheart. Not on purpose, maybe, but yes. Are you sad? I considered this carefully. I'm sad about what I wanted us to have, but I'm not sad about choosing us, you and me, over people who didn't choose us back. Emma was quiet for a moment. Then she looked up at me with those serious 6-year-old eyes. "We're enough, right? Just us?" "We're more than enough." She smiled and closed her eyes, satisfied. My business was thriving. Without the constant drain of $700 a week, I had financial breathing room, real breathing room. I invested in better equipment, took on bigger projects, started saving for Emma's college fund. Real savings, not just hoping to save someday. I realized their financial manipulation hadn't just taken my money. It had kept me small, struggling, dependent on their validation because I was always one emergency away from needing them. They'd engineered my dependency, and I'd never seen it until I stepped away. Late one Thursday evening, my phone buzzed with a message from a number I didn't recognize. I almost deleted it, but something made me open it. "Sydney, this is Mark, Vanessa's husband. Can we talk? There are things about your parents you should know. Things I couldn't say while Vanessa was listening." I stared at the message. My heart beat faster. I didn't know what to expect, but I knew it was important. I typed back. When? I met Mark at a park 2 days later. Emma played on the swings while we sat at a picnic table. He looked uncomfortable, guilty, but determined. I need to tell you something I should have told you years ago. Your parents have been taking money from Vanessa and me too. I stared at him, confused. Not directly, but they've been borrowing from Vanessa. For emergencies, for bills, for unexpected expenses. She's given them over $50,000 from our savings. I only found out 6 months ago when I was reviewing our accounts. $50,000. On top of everything else. The number made me dizzy. Mark continued, his voice low and careful. I confronted Vanessa. She defended them completely. She insisted they needed help. That family takes care of family. She accused me of being selfish and unsupportive. I watched Emma pump her legs on the swing, higher and higher, fearless. I realized something, Mark said quietly. Your parents didn't just favor Vanessa. They groomed her. They made her dependent on their approval by giving her constant attention and validation. And now she can't see what they're doing, because admitting they're manipulative would mean admitting she's been their accomplice. I felt a strange sympathy for my sister. Not enough to reconcile, not enough to forgive, but enough to understand. Vanessa wasn't just the golden child. She was trapped in a different kind of cage, one made of praise and attention instead of neglect. But still a cage. Mark apologized for not speaking up sooner, for not supporting me when I set boundaries, for not protecting his own family from the manipulation. I'm going to file for separation, not just because of the money, because Vanessa can't see that her parents are toxic, and she's willing to sacrifice our family's financial security to maintain their approval. I can't raise our kids in that dynamic. I didn't know what to say. I hadn't intended to blow up my sister's marriage, but I also hadn't created this situation. I just stopped participating in the lie. That evening after Emma went to bed, I received one last message from my mother. I saw her name on my screen and almost didn't open it, but something made me look. I hope you're happy. Your sister's marriage is falling apart. Her husband is leaving her. The twins are going to grow up in a broken home. This is what your selfishness has caused. I read the message 3 times. The old guilt rose up like a wave, the familiar voice that said I was responsible for everyone's happiness, that I should have stayed quiet, that I should have kept the peace no matter what it cost me. But then I looked at Emma's bedroom door. I thought about the money now sitting in savings accounts instead of funding vacations I wasn't invited to. I thought about the relationships I was building with Aunt Linda and Uncle Mark and cousins who actually saw me as a person. I thought about Emma growing up watching me have boundaries, watching me choose dignity over dysfunction, learning that love shouldn't hurt. I deleted the message without responding. My mother's words revealed the truth more clearly than any apology could have. She wasn't upset about what they'd done. She was upset about the consequences of what they'd done. They weren't sorry for the manipulation. They were sorry they got caught. They were sorry I'd stopped being easy to control. They would never change, and I was finally okay with that. I opened my phone settings, found my mother's contact, blocked the number. Not in anger, not in revenge, but in peace. I was done explaining, done defending, done hoping they'd suddenly see me as worthy of basic respect and love. I was choosing a different legacy for Emma, one where love isn't conditional, where family means safety instead of performance, where no one has to earn what should be freely given. The cycle ended with me. 6 months later, the repayment check still arrived. Every month. Like clockwork. $500 in a white envelope with no note. I deposited them without emotion, without attachment. The money went straight into Emma's college fund, transformed from manipulation into opportunity. I hadn't spoken to my parents or Vanessa in 6 months. The silence that once terrified me now felt like peace. My business had grown. I'd taken on 3 new clients in the past month alone. Good clients who paid on time and respected my work. I had breathing room, real breathing room. I took Emma on a weekend trip. Nothing extravagant, just a small beach town 3 hours away. We built sandcastles and collected shells and ate ice cream for dinner because we could, because no one was judging us, because we were enough, just the two of us. Emma didn't ask about her grandparents anymore. She talked about Aunt Linda and Uncle Mark, about the cousins she played with at family dinners, about the relationships that actually showed up. I realized I wasn't teaching Emma to cut off family. I was teaching her that family is defined by behavior, not biology, that love should be demonstrated, not just declared. One evening, I received a friend request on social media from someone I didn't recognize. The profile picture showed a woman about my age, dark hair, kind eyes. The message read, "Hi, Sydney. My name is Michelle. I'm your father's daughter from his first marriage. I saw your post about your parents. I think we need to talk." I stared at that message for a long time. I had a half-sister I never knew existed, another family secret, another pattern of abandonment, another person hurt by my parents' choices. I accepted the request. We talked for 3 hours that night. Michelle's story mirrored mine in ways that made my chest tight. Our father left when she was 8, provided minimal support, remarried, and started a new family. Michelle tried to maintain contact throughout her childhood and was consistently disappointed, dismissed, and eventually discarded. "He did this before," Michelle said. Her voice was calm but sad. "He's done it his entire life. He creates families and then ranks them, and whoever needs him least gets the least attention. It's not about you, Sydney, it's who he is." This conversation gave me something I didn't know I needed. Confirmation that the problem was never my inadequacy. It was always their incapacity. I'd spent 32 years trying to earn love from people who don't know how to give it. Not because I wasn't enough, but because they're fundamentally broken in ways I can't fix. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't hurt. I was just done. The following Sunday, I went to another family dinner at Aunt Linda's house. Emma was laughing with her cousins in the backyard. I sat at the table talking with Michelle, building a relationship with the sister I never knew I had, creating something real from the wreckage of what should have been. I looked around the table at the family I'd chosen, the people who showed up, who told the truth, who chose connection over comfort. This is what healing looks like. Not dramatic confrontation or perfect revenge, but quiet boundaries and chosen family. I learned that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply stop participating in your own diminishment. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever had to choose yourself over people who should have chosen you first, you're not alone. Hit that like button and subscribe, because your story matters too. And remember, peace isn't about them changing. It's about you refusing to shrink anymore. I'm Sydney Marsh. I'm 32 years old. And for the first time in my life, I'm enough exactly as I am.